record this just so we have it afterwards in case anybody wants a copy of it. I can send it out to you if there's something you want to go back and reference today. I'm Kelly Tinnen, the training administrator at GAR. However, I'm in my home office today in desperate need of a haircut. But nonetheless, we're all here together. We have a small group today, which is great. I have put everybody on mute. You don't need your cameras on for this class today, so feel free to get comfortable. I've muted everybody just for the simple fact of background noise. So if you want to talk, make sure you unmute, or you can use the chat function as well to share anything or to ask questions and things like that. As I mentioned, I shared a couple documents in the chat that you're welcome to download and reference as part of the class material. And the property we're going to be using today, I did drop in the chat too, and it's this property on Arkansas Road Northwest in the Storm Cloud subdivision. So that's going to be our sample property today. So I'm going to take you through a couple of different ways to search for data when running a CMA. So when running your market analysis, there are lots of different ways that you can search for data. Some of those ways may be, you know, with Zone Atlas, maybe with the MLS areas. The two things we're going to focus on today are going to be using the wildcard search in Flex and also using the mapping. And so we'll talk a lot about those two today, but just note these are just two ways that you can search for information. There's lots of different ways to search for data to come up with a very comprehensive CMA. So again, don't just think you're limited to these two particular methods. These are just two that I'm going to show you and some tips and different things that we're going to focus on today. So do I have any questions coming into the class that you're hoping to get answered out of today's material? Is there something coming in that's top of mind that you're wanting to get out of today? Okay, so if not right now, that's okay. As we go along in the material, if questions come up, pop them in the chat, unmute, and speak up. Again, we have a fairly small group, and again, the questions you know, help us all learn different situations that individuals might be dealing with in the marketplace. Okay, so CMAs, we're going to look at it again, as I mentioned, using the wildcard search and mapping today, but also from the perspective of the seller. So we're going to be having our seller hat on today as if we're going into a listing appointment. But also note that you want to be able to run CMAs for buyers as well. When you're writing offers on a property, you may need to run some comps to determine, okay, how are we going to negotiate this offer? Is this property overpriced? What are we dealing with? And so just note, those are really two perspectives of which you're going to want to look at the numbers, but we're going to have our seller hats on today when we run our CMA. So again, we're going to use this property on Arkansas Road Northwest to jump into our search here. And so we're going to actually kind of start out with a case study, again, as if a seller were to come to us, hey, I'm wanting to sell my property, and we're going to proceed from that standpoint. So I'm going to open it up with our case. Oh, good to see you, Karma and Dawn. So, and this is in the CMA Pricing Properties to Sell handout that I've shared with you. You can reference that as well. Okay, so we are contacted by our seller, Jesse, who will be moving to an undisclosed location at the start of the summer to start his early retirement. His property is located at 8816 Arkansas Road Northwest. He's owned it for 10 years and has no mortgage. We've determined from an old appraisal floor plan that the home is 1,600 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, 2-car garage, 2 stories, built in 2015. Property, for the purpose of this case study, we're going to say that it's in good condition. So we're going to start by first, we're going to need to gather some property details, which a lot we have, and then we're going to start using the wildcard search. And so I'm going to explain what that is here in just a second. Just for those of you, I'm seeing questions about the handout. I have linked that up in the chat. I just dragging it over again here in the chat. And so you just need to click on it and it should open right up for you. I just shared that in the chat, shared it with everybody. All right. So we want to have some basic property details for our CMA, which we have. We know we're dealing with a certain size of properties, 3 bedrooms, built in 2015, 2-car garage. We're assuming it's in good condition. We're going to want to go, obviously, if this were an actual case, we would want to go look at the property and get a better sense for what we might be dealing with. Updates and property details, we're going to want to have that information going in, because what we're going to want to do is, as we build our CMA, we're going to want to, and I have a graph, I always forget the graph. If I remember and can pull it up, I'll share it with you guys. If not, I'll email it to everybody afterwards. But what we're wanting to do is to essentially create kind of a benchmark. So a line, and then we're wanting to plot our properties along that line and see where our subject fits among all of the other properties. So we're going to start to build that. Okay. And then the thing that we also want to remember, so one of the biggest tips that I have for being able to run really comprehensive CMAs seems very trivial, but it's actually very helpful, and is to get out and to look at properties. And I know right now with the visiting restrictions and things that we're dealing with, that can be a little bit more difficult, but to actually look at properties in different areas, because the city of Albuquerque as a whole and the whole market performs in one way, but as we start to break up into different areas of the city, markets are very unique. And so what may be happening in Ventana Ranch is not necessarily going to be the same conditions of Uptown, even though we might have similar size of properties. They're very different in their makeup. They're very different in the types of buyers. So those are things we want to keep in mind too. And looking at properties can be really valuable for you to be able to assess what's going on and how to manage your CMA. Okay, so we're going to start with the wildcard search. As we move into what that is, what the wildcard search is, do I have any questions so far?
No.
So the wildcard search, I shared this handout also in the chat, and I'm going to email these out afterwards too. But your wildcard search handout looks like this. And essentially what we're talking about is all we have to do is add an asterisk before and after the term that we're looking for to identify specific areas. And so why I use that in my CMA searching is because it really helps me refine and narrow down specific properties that are similar in makeup, similar in build, things like that. So let's hop back into Flex. And let's start with our project. So our client, Jesse, has called us and says, hey, I'm going to be retiring to an undisclosed location, and I need to sell my home on the west side of Albuquerque. And we've collected some of the information. We kind of know what size we may be dealing with, what are the bedrooms, you know, what kind of updates and things we may be dealing with. And now we're ready to start our data search. So I'm here in Flex, and I'm going to just go to my Flex menu, and I'm going to hit Quick Search here. So Quick Search is kind of our, I call it like the catch-all everything search. So everything I need to do, I can essentially do from this box right here. So just a little tidbit, if you see, I have a couple of yellow highlighted stars here off to the left-hand side. Those are just favorites. So if you're not familiar with that, if I happen to click on one of those, it favorites that for me. So now it appears up here in my quick search bar, so I don't have to go hunting for it. Okay, so now I've selected quick search, and I'm gonna start using the wildcard feature. So in my search box here, I've got my fields off to the left-hand side, my map here in the center, which we're gonna deal with here in a bit. And we're gonna work a lot off of the listing detail reports here. Okay, so my first question for the group, and you can answer in the chat, is I'm running a CMA. So there are 3 types of properties, potentially, I'm gonna throw in a 4th, but 3 types of properties that we're going to want to look for. What are those 3 types of properties? You can just drop it in the chat if you like. So okay. So I'm gonna wanna search, thank you, Salicia, for active, pending, and closed. Now I throw in a 4th, and this is kind of an optional thing. You can also include expireds. So you may include this depending on the client that you're going to see. The expireds, what they can tell you is at what point were properties not selling. So we kind of have that range between, okay, our active, pending, and closed. This is what's closed and selling. But then the expireds are often an indication of overpricing. And so that's going to show that threshold of like, oh, this is our point here where we're over the line, or we've missed the mark, so to speak. Yeah, why they didn't sell, exactly. And oftentimes it could be price, it could be pricing and condition. So I throw in expireds there as an option. Depending on your client situation, that may or may not be applicable. So I've selected these 3 separately, just a little tidbit. If you're on a Mac, to do this, you hold down the command button. If you are on a PC, it should be the shift button. So what are the active properties going to tell us? If I'm putting actives in my CMA, what am I going to, what is that information going to give me? Your competition. Yes, Diana, absolutely. Who your competitors are. Now, as you'll see, as we start running comps on this property, there's not a lot of competition right now. And you guys are probably experiencing that because there's not a lot of homes for sale. Things that are coming for sale are typically moving very quickly. And so that's going to be reflective in some of the searching we'll do today. But yeah, who your competitors are. And it could be an advantage that we don't have a lot of them right now. So our pending properties reflect those that are in escrow or under contract, but haven't yet closed. So what could that tell us on our CMA? It could tell us things like how quickly homes are turning over in a neighborhood. So maybe the more pending properties we have, that could be a sign of an area that people are moving into. It can also show us, again, we're creating that line and we're trying to kind of line everything up. It can also show us at what point, at what asking price did that property tip over, so to speak. At what point did that property tip the scale and go into pending? So it went from active to pending. So it's going to show us that price point of when that occurred. That's not necessarily reflective of what that closed price is, but it's going to give us an idea. Okay, at this price point, this property brought an offer. And then our closed properties is what? What is that going to tell us? That's really the meat of our CMA, right? Closed properties are going to tell us what the market drove in terms of price, fair market value, what's appraising, and what's closing. So what people are willing to pay. So those are the three, potentially four if you add the expireds on there, pieces of information that you're going to want to look at. So for the purpose of our case today, I've just selected active, pending, and closed. Any questions? Okay, so the next thing we've got here, another little tip I just want to show you guys. If anybody's off-market dates is a hard number of dates back, like this is reflecting here, and you don't, that's not your preference, if I click on these arrows right here off to the side, I can change that to a number of flat days back. And this is actually my preference. And so just note that's how you change from one to the other. So if yours doesn't look the same and you want to change it, that's where you can do that. Okay, so on my closing date, I'm not as concerned with my pending date because typically we know within maybe actually less than 30 days right now, but I would say within 30 to 60 days, properties typically go from pending to closed in most situations. So I'm not too worried about this, but my closing date, I want to narrow that down. Now, traditionally, how many months back might I want to go? So I might want to go 6 months. Okay, Karma says 3. We're going to talk about that. At a max, we want to go 180 days at a max. Now, Karma, you mentioned 3 months. And this where CMAs kind of come up. They can be like unique to the user in the sense that you may want to start out here and work your way in, or you may start here and work your way out. Now, when I'm looking for data, I can start at 180 days for my closing date. What I think you could run into is, let's say I use a comp today that closed 180 days ago. When my property goes under contract, now right now they're going under contract rather quickly, but when my property goes under contract, that comp may not be relevant anymore. So the newer the data, the better. So Karma, I would say 3 months is totally acceptable and probably what I might work with. How I used to just kind of methodically run through looking for my data is I'd start out here and then I'd work my way in. So however you like to do that. Since Karma suggested 90 days, let's shoot for 90 right now. Okay, my property subtype, this is important as well because we have to compare apples to apples. So is our property detached or attached? Yes, Alexandra, it's detached. So I'm going to select the detached subtype because I don't want to compare my single family detached property to a condo or to a townhome because it's not the same type of property, and we're dealing with kind of a different market of buyers for one versus the other. So I'm going to select detached. Okay. So now this is where I get into a little bit of subjectivity in terms of how I like to maneuver my information. So from here, I can come in and I can continue to narrow down by bedrooms, by bathrooms, by square footage, if I want to. What I definitely want to do now is I want to hop here to the short legal description. I'm going to click on this box and check it. Now, our property happens to be in the Storm Cloud subdivision. So just to, again, show you, I have the listing sheet here. Open. There it is. Okay. So let me just show you. So I have my sample listing sheet here. And where I'm finding the info from the short legal description is here in the bottom right-hand corner under county data. What I'm looking for is the name of the subdivision in the legal description. So the reason I pick, and this is just, the wildcard search is one preference, and the reason that I used this versus the subdivision field, this was just a preference, is if the subdivision field didn't have it spelled correctly, I could, or it was left blank, or whatever the case may be, I could have been missing some data. So I just opted to search it via the legal description. And so I see it here. And so bottom right-hand corner of my listing, let's go back. So what I do is I put a star before, whoops, and after my my short legal description. The subdivision happens to be Storm Cloud. So Storm Cloud, one word, asterisk before and after. So it's telling, what it's telling it is, in the short legal description, I want you to just pull properties that have Storm Cloud in the short legal description. So the asterisk before and afterwards. Now, once I do that, again, I can come in here too and I can narrow down. We're not going to do this because we're going to go to the detail sheet, but I can narrow down things like bedrooms, garage spaces, stories, etc. Or I can click over to my detail sheet and I can go through the properties and I can eliminate them from my inventory, so to speak, one by one. And so we're going to do that in a sense just because there's different things about properties that I want to point out as we go through our CMA. So just note that there's no real right or wrong way to maneuver the data. I can come in here and I can say, give me just 2 stories. Give me properties that are within 1,500 and 2,500 square feet. I can do that, or I can come through and click and look at them one by one. Any questions? Okay. All right, so we're going to take a look at a few of these here. So our properties are sorted, active, pending, and closed. So I'm going to start with the active here. So Diana mentioned our actives are our competitors. So we're going to want to evaluate who our competition is. And immediately by looking at some of our results, I can see our competitor is going to be what? Does anybody kind of notice? New construction. So my first question is, when I'm running comps and I have my property is a resale, it's a recently built home in 2015, so it's been built in the last 5 years, which in my opinion is a fairly new home. Can I directly compare it to new construction? No. When I'm running comps, I don't want my comps. Thank you, Karma. No, you can't. You don't want your comps to reflect new construction because our property is not new. It's resale. But do we have to, in terms of kind of a competition standpoint, understand what is happening with new construction? Yeah. So I can see here immediately that we've got, now these homes are about 400-ish square feet bigger than ours, but I can see immediately that I've got several properties that are newly constructed in the same vicinity as my property. So what are some things that new construction can offer, maybe that a resale property cannot? Maybe those financing incentives, closing cost incentives, the washer and dryer, you know, the free maid for a year, all of that sort of stuff, right? So we have to understand, okay, we've got new construction in the area, and so we have to be mindful or keep top of mind. Yeah, Mary, exactly. Bonuses. We have to keep top of mind that we've got new construction in the area. And so while when we're running our comps, they may not be directly a competitor, but they still are what, in terminology, what I would use is kind of an indirect competition. They are something that I have to be aware of and mindful of what they're offering and build that into my marketing strategy. So I can see that as I go through a lot of these, we're dealing with a lot of new construction. In fact, I think most of these are, which is okay. So the thing with CMAs too is we may run a search over here with wildcard. We may run a search over here with mapping. We may have to do another type of search and put that data together. So as we're completing our first search, if we don't find everything that we need, that's okay. We may have to go and search a couple of different methods and put everything together. Because in the MLS, what somebody puts in terms of listing data is what everyone else is going to get out. So that's why we may have to do more than one search to really find the most comprehensive and robust information so we can complete our CMA. All right, so we've got new construction galore happening for us right now. So pretty much most of our active properties fall into that category. So I'm gonna keep scrolling down here. I've got this guy on warm wind. Okay, so I've got this guy on warm wind. Now let's start talking about some things that we're gonna look for. Built in 2017. Just 3 days on the market, so brand new on the market here. Okay, this property is 2,100 square feet, 21 and a half. Our subject is 1,600. So what do you think? If you are pulling data for this property, would you use this comp or do you think it's too big? Tell me what you guys think. Okay, Karma, too big. Okay, yeah, absolutely. So this one might be a little bit too, thank you, Barry. Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, too big. So this one is probably a little bit too big for us to be able to use as a comparable. As a rule of thumb, what I had learned and kind of picked up from appraisers and different trainings throughout my years is I would go plus or minus, smaller or bigger, 150 to 200 square feet in either direction. For a traditional neighborhood, traditional home, which is what we're using. So this house is, I'm going to just say 2,200 square feet, just rounding up. Is that the same type of buyer as a buyer of 1,600 square feet? No, it's not. Same thing if this particular house was 3,500 square feet. It's not the same type of buyer, the same target market that's going to be looking for this home. So that's why we want to keep the sizes of the properties relative to each other. Okay, so we'll kind of keep moving here. All right. So we've got another guy on Wind Ridge, might be a little bit too big. And now we're moving into the closed properties. So, all right. So we've got one on Animus here. 96 days on market, built in 2018, so relative to ours, 1,780 square feet. So this is closer to our subject. Would you guys agree? Yeah. Okay. So some other things that I'm going to look for. I'm going to look and make sure the size kind of taps out here. We're dealing kind of with the same caliber of property, same size of property. Now our property is a 2-story. So can we have a 2-story 1,700 and a 1-story 1,700? Yeah, we can. We can, absolutely. So let's see here. I was looking for something and just went out the door there. Okay. So as we start to evaluate our properties, the things that we want to start looking for are obviously are the sizes in range, are the build types, like in terms of when it was built, are they sort of in range? So if this house was built in 1975, would I want to use that as a comp? Probably not, because it's not kind of built to the same standards as our subject. So, okay, so we look at our year built, our size. This is a 1-story. Our subject is a 2-story. We'll talk about that in terms of should we use it or not, and in terms of like marketing value. All right. So we're dealing with closed properties. This one took 96 days to close. So when I'm looking at days on market, if I'm looking at active properties, and as we start to line these up, you'll start to see this. Knowing right now that properties, I think, are selling on average less than 30 days in our general marketplace, I might be able to start to analyze, okay, these guys may be overpriced. These guys might have been overpriced. Other things I can look at here are the history tab. I can actually get a sense for, okay, these guys started out at 258. I can see the price changes that took place before it went into pending and what the property closed at. I can see if the property was in escrow and then came out of escrow. So I can kind of start to paint that story and get an understanding of what happened with the class or with the house. Okay. So as we scroll through our listing here, some other things that we want to look at. We're dealing with an HOA, and I believe our subject is also in an HOA, probably the same one. We're also dealing with the PID. Okay, these are two things that I want to look at here. If this property was a bank-owned property, would I use it? What do you guys think? No. We wouldn't use it bank-owned or short sale because we're not dealing in a market that is primarily distressed. So we would have to, obviously, yeah, exactly, Mary. We wouldn't use them, nor would we use the short sale because we're not dealing with a market that's distressed. And so we would want to omit those so that we can get a sense of, okay, traditional resales, what are they garnering for fair market value? Okay, a couple of other things I want to look at are in the sale info box here. Specifically, what I want to look at is how that property sold. This one sold with conventional financing. So what about if this property sold with a real estate contract? So, or owner financing. Would we use it? Now I can't speak for every owner finance situation, but what traditionally takes place with owner financing? The seller is carrying the risk by taking on the financing of that property. Therefore, the buyer is often paying at a premium. So because the seller's taking on the risk, the buyer is often paying a higher price and things like that. And so that could impact our market value here. So I probably would not want to use it in that case. What if this said cash? So same sort of situation. I say in those situations with cash, maybe even owner financing, it's a seek more information kind of situation. So I might call the broker and say, hey, I'm just trying to assess some comps and I'm not finding enough data. I want to use this property because it's just like my subject, but it's sold on a real estate contract. You know, can you give me some insight into the, into the pricing? Same thing with cash, although, and you guys may be able to speak to things a little bit differently, but from what I'm seeing, I don't see where cash really makes a huge difference in terms of being able to get a steal of a price, so to speak. I don't really see that being the case. And so I want to mention that because just some things to look for when running your CMAs. It's not necessarily all about that sales price, that closing price. There are other factors that can come into play, and that could be type of financing. It could be also concessions. Yeah, so Mary shared cash doesn't affect the seller, saves only the buyer fees, but would look into incentives. So yeah, there's going to be a few fees that are obviously saved there. Maybe no appraisal, no survey, the lender fees, obviously. But yeah, I would agree that I don't think that there's that much impact on that closing price, so to speak. Concessions. And so when we speak in Flex about concessions, And in this particular situation about concessions, we're talking about buyer closing costs, or you may hear the term BCC, stands for buyer closing costs. This is a percentage or a dollar amount that the seller contributed to the buyer to help them close on the property. So we want to look at that as well, because that's something something financial that the seller is contributing and can impact the way that we look at our comps. In this case, that didn't occur. Okay, so I want to throw one more thing at you here. I'm going to go back to days on market for a second. Now, in terms of closed properties, this property closed in 96 days. What if this said 0 or 1? What could that mean? It could mean it could mean lots of things, but what are some things that might come to your mind? Yeah, absolutely, Stephanie. So in this market, it could be it was just listed. So it could mean a lot of things. In this market, in a lot of cases, it could just mean like there are not a lot of homes for sale. And so they are coming and going very quickly. But it could also mean I sold it to my brother. It could mean a lot of other factors. So it's not necessarily a situation where you don't want to use it. You just want to investigate it. Was it a condition of where the market warranted that price? And so we want to make sure when we're using comps that they've had a chance to be exposed to the fair market and drive the highest and best price for the property. And in this market, that could be the case because things are moving so quickly, but it may not. It may mean I sold the property to my brother, or the neighbor wanted to buy the house for their mother. And so there were some other circumstances that prevented that property, that transaction from being arm's length and from being exposed to the fair market. So just some things to keep in mind. No problem, Diana. I see your comment. I'm recording this, so I will send it over to you. Okay, any questions? Okay, so in our assessment, so right now we're just taking properties and we're going to put them in our bucket. Would we want to use this one? Possibly. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select it, and I have my results here, and I have my selected. So Darlene had the question, is price per square foot a factor? No. We're not looking at price per square foot. Appraisers aren't going to look at price per square foot. We don't really want to look at that as properties, as their size changes. Obviously, the bigger the home, the cheaper it gets to build. But what we're really trying to determine is we're trying to line them all up, and I'll do a drawing demonstration for you guys here and really assess, okay, at top end, this is where we are in this range of properties, and at low end, this is where we are in these types of properties, and where does this property fit on that plot? The price per square foot, yeah, isn't going to be a factor at all. Okay, so we won't go through all of these. I've put together kind of a cheat sheet for us here in a bit, but you guys get the idea. So under our wildcard search, we're going to go through each of our comps, and we're going to analyze these things. What is the size? Oh, this one's under construction. This one on Cloudy Road, okay, 2015, it's quite a bit larger than ours. So we go through each property and determine, okay, do the characteristics, do they match our subject? We also want to look at the photos. We want to go look at properties if we can. Now, these particular properties are closed, so we're not going to go knock on the door and be like, hey, I know you bought this house 6 months ago, but can I come in and take a look? So we have to make our best assessment from the pictures. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call other brokers if you have questions. So we want to assess the condition of the property, because what we're trying to do, again, is we're trying to say we have our subject property in this condition. We have our comparables in this condition, and how does our subject stack up? Active properties, absolutely. Don't be afraid to go and look at them. So again, we look at the condition of the properties. Maybe if they're active, we go and look at them. Maybe we take our clients to go and look. Sometimes we have to do that because they can't separate their, it's residential sales is emotional in the sense that both the seller and the buyer transact on emotion. So the seller can't understand why somebody wouldn't like the 5 couches in the living room, because that's how our family gathered and things like that. So you have to help them understand what their competition looks like. So we'll go through the properties, we'll make our selections, and I'll show you a little trick here. Once I have my property selected that I want, and I've already done some of the legwork for us here, I hop over to my selected here, and I'm going to hop over to save, but I'm going to put them in a cart or a basket. So how I do that is I hit save selected as, and I put them in a collection instead of a saved search. What I like about the collection when running comps is I have the ability to put everything from different searches, so I can have my map search, my wildcard search, my zone atlas search, whatever that looks like, and I can put all of that data into one basket, and then I can go back and see it no matter what. So if this property was active and it changed to pending, it's still going to be in my basket. So I give it a name and I save it. I'll show you where the collection, where you retrieve those collections here in a bit. Now we're going to move on to the map searching portion. So do I have any questions about searching for data with the wildcard search in the short legal description? Okay. So the next thing we're going to do, now we've done our wildcard search and we've put our properties into a basket and assessed which ones we want to use, but we don't quite have enough data. So the next thing we want to do is we're going to do a map search, and we're going to try to find more information. So I'm going to go back to menu and I'm going to go to quick search. Now I'm in the same screen again, but this time I'm going to utilize the mapping features first. So what I have to do is I have to pin my subject. So I have to tell Flex, this is the property I'm searching around. And to do that, I click here on this push pin down in the right-hand corner. And I plug in my subject address, which is 8816 Arkansas Road Northwest. And in most cases, if I have the zip code, it should find that property for me. Okay. This happens to be the location of our subject, so I'm going to say yes, let's use that. I'm going to get rid of this bubble because rather than use the shortcut radius search, we're going to talk about the different search tools here. So I'm going to zoom out of that. I'm going to zoom out just a hair here so we can see more of our area. Okay. So with mapping and running comps using mapping, or just looking at data in general, understanding the nuances of your market is very valuable. Okay, so for instance, I might have to zoom this guy in just a hair. There we go. So for instance, we have Unser here, we have Ladera here. Are properties on one side of Unser versus the other a little bit different? Like Laurelwood, for instance, is right here. Are they going to be a little bit different type of property, different build, different age in Laurelwood, for instance, versus our storm cloud area? Yeah. We have I-40 here. Properties on one side of I-40 versus the other are going to be different build, different makeup type of property. So those are things we want to keep in mind. So even within, you know, the west side of Albuquerque, so to speak, and within, let's see how far these areas are, within a mile of each other, we've got very different types of properties. So when using the mapping tools, we just want to be mindful of that. So I'm going to zoom out just a hair here. So I have the radius tool here. I can click on the radius. I can go out a mile, but you can see in my radius that I've got all kinds of different stuff going on within just a mile of my property. I'm going to get rid of that. And I don't like that when you delete the map, it zooms way out. So let me zoom back in. Whereas my polygon tool, or I call it the freehand tool, the technical term in Flex is the polygon. I am able to click on that and I can actually draw the boundaries that I want. So I can actually draw and say, these properties in this particular area I've drawn are most like my subject, and this is just the area that I want. Really, this is where CMAs can be a little subjective, because I can use either option, but I have to know and understand the nuances of the market and understand that within a mile, half mile of my property, the makeup of homes is going to be really different. So I'm going to go ahead and select my freehand tool, and I'm just going to draw. So every single click I make, and I don't have to be super pretty about it, is going to be a stopping point. But maybe I just want to stay right along Ladera, bordering Arroyo Vista, and this should be Unser right here. Okay, so now what's going to happen is I've drawn this map, and now I can come through and I can say, give me my comps, my active, come on, there we go. My active, pending, and closed. We'll go back 90 days because I believe that was Karma's suggestion. Detached. And then again, we can come through and we can narrow down our size. What we leave out this time is the short legal description. We don't need that because now we're searching via map. So we've searched legal description. Now we're going to search map and see what else we can come up with. There may be some overlap, and that's okay. Okay, so what I might do, because I've got 58 properties here, is I might actually narrow down my square footage, and I might say a maximum of, we're 1,600. Let's do 1,850 just to see what we come up with. Okay. So then I click over to my detail sheet. And again, I go through the same process. I evaluate my active properties. Okay, this one's 1,500 square feet. It's almost the same size as my subject. It's a little bit older. How many days has it been on the market? A total of 62, 20 days, this current listing. What do the interior photos look like? Okay, this one, is this a bank owned? Let me see. Short sale. This one's a short sale. So we're probably going to omit that from our list right now. So again, go through the same sort of thing. Okay, this one was built in 2001. Is it the same size within kind of the same build range? What does the condition of the property look like? And again, I'm adding those all to my basket. I go through the closed properties again. We're gonna have some new builds in here. Here we go. 1710, little bit older. See, this guy already came up. So again, I go through the same process. I evaluate each comp. I look at the condition. Is it in better condition, in worse condition, in the same condition as my subject? And do I want to include it? So for instance, this guy right here, that might have been new construction. Yep, new construction. Okay, so then I select the ones that I want. And again, I go through, I have one that we've already put together here. I go through, I save them. Save selected as, and I just add it to my collection. So it would be test collection. Add to my collection, boom. So again, what I'm doing is I'm taking data from here and here and I'm putting it together to build a comprehensive CMA. Any questions so far? Okay, let's go in now and let's look at that collection, analyze that data, and then let's put it together. So to find my collection, I'm gonna go to menu. How I find most things is I just type what I'm looking for in this search box here, and it's actually under listing collections. So if I click on this guy, I can see all my listing collections. And so the one I want is actually right here, this 526 CMA. This is the one I put together earlier for our search today. So we've gone through our wildcard search and found our data. We've gone through our mapping search and found some data, and now we're going to put it together. So here's everything we've collected. I click on that collection, and here's all of it. So for instance, I'm going to switch the order of these. If this one on warm wind went and closed, let's say, from when I started the search to when I finished, it would still be in my collection. These are actually sorted in the way that I look at data backwards. I want my actives on top. So all I need to do here is click on status and change to sort in ascending order. And this is just a preference of mine, but I like to look at things active, pending, closed. So I've got my one active property. So ideally what I'm aiming for is 3 actives, 3 pendings, and 3 closed. However, in this particular market, properties are moving very quickly. They're coming and they're going into pending very fast. So in this case, I haven't been able to find a lot of competition. So that could also be an indicator to my seller. We don't have a lot of direct competition. We do have some indirect competition, and what was that? New construction. But in terms of our direct competitors, we don't have a whole lot. So we've got our our active property here. We've got our pending properties here. And then we've got our closed properties here. Okay, these are probably a little bit bigger, but that's okay because we're going to go ahead and look at it. And then we've got our 3 closed. So again, we're trying to find properties that are similar to our subject, maybe a little better than our subject, and maybe not as nice condition as our subject. So again, we've got that range we're creating. From here, I can do several things with the data. So we're going to look at a couple of different tools here. I'm not going to look in depth at the Flex CMA tool, although it is an option. I can actually upload this data right in. I can import it right into the Flex CMA tool. I'm not going to look at it because I want to focus strictly on the one-line CMA here. And then I want to mention the RPR CMA and the Remind CMA and just talk about some of the nuances of those tools because they do work a little bit differently and look at the data a little bit differently. So I just want to make you aware of that. So I'm going to click here now, CMA. And what I'm looking for down here is under the one-line tool. And so this is going to give us that black and white report. But I want to look at it because I want to be able to talk about how to interpret the data. So I'm going to click here on one-line CMA. I can click on a PDF just as well, and I get the same information. But when I do that, I get this black and white, very simplistic report for my clients. So you can take this data, there are a lot of tools you can plug it into. We're going to talk about Remind and RPR. But again, what it really comes down to is understanding the data and how to talk about it to your clients. So now we've got our listings here. We've got our one direct competitor here. Not a lot of competition. We've got our pending properties here. And we've got our closed properties, which are all pretty close to our subject. Okay, so our active is telling us who our competitors are. And so I can see this property is obviously a little bit larger than our subject. It's been on the market 11 days. It's priced at $270. So let's assume, I don't remember off the top of my head. Let's go back and look. Okay, so it's in fair condition. It's in decent condition. No fancy upgrades or anything like that. And so we want to be able to speak to that. Okay, this property, has the original kitchen or has updated flooring or has this or that, and that compares to ours. How does it make it better, the same, or in inferior condition? So if this said, this is 11 days on market, if this said 111 days on market, what is that going to tell us probably about this price right here? That it's too much. So it shows us what our competitors are. Well, this competitor is overpriced. So now I know I need to be under this and appear in better condition. So my number needs to be under this, but I have to appear in better condition. So we're building our marketing strategy. We also know there's not a lot of competition. We could actually speak to that. Now, we would want to speak to the new construction. Now, while it's not a direct competitor per se, this home's 5 years old, but we are dealing with new construction, and they can offer closing cost incentives, they can offer bonuses, etc. And so we have to understand that we could be indirectly competing with some new construction. Similar, what you would do is I would look up similar sized properties with similar amenities to mine and see what they're priced at. And it could be a matter of where they're priced in a range where it's just not going to be competitive to us, or it could be competitive. So I want to know that, so I can tell my client, okay, this is what new construction is doing, and this is where they are selling at, and this is how it impacts our situation. Our pending properties here, we've got our pending competitors here. Again, I would look at the conditions of the properties. That is the wrong one. Let's go back to the photos. So I would look at the conditions. Okay, we can see maybe they've done some flooring updates. The dinosaurs do not convey. I can see things like that. In terms of the condition of the property. And again, I'm going back and I'm speaking about that. And I can see, okay, these ones went under contract fairly quickly. Now, they haven't closed yet, but they went under contract within 3 days and essentially a week of being listed. And we can see what they were listed at. We can assess their condition. And so now we know, okay, our competitors priced at $270. These two sold, and this one's already been on the market 11 days. These two sold or went under contract in, let's just say, a week, and where they're priced at. So now we're starting to kind of build our chart, and we can see, okay, between 250 and 270. And maybe this one right here is very similar to our subject, hypothetically. And then down here in the closed properties, the same sort of thing. We want to assess those by looking at, okay, these are all very similar in size to our subject. This one was on the market for 96 days. So this shows me there could have been an issue with pricing. Sold at 255. This one on Summer Breeze, 13 days. Sold at 249. This one on Rain Place sold at 235 for both of these were 100% of asking. So again, I'd go back to look at the condition of the property. What is it are we dealing with in terms of condition? And how do they stack up? Couple of other things I'm going to look at here. My sale SP percent LP stands for sales price to list price. I'm going to look at this because this is going to show me how much it helps me answer the question when my client asks, well, what am I going to get for my home? Well, we don't know. The best thing we can do is based on prior history, we can estimate you're going to hopefully get pretty close to what we're asking, assuming price and condition are in place. And we can speak to these. We can say this property on Summer Breeze is just like ours, very similar condition. It's the same floor plan, and they got 100% of what they're asking. This one on Rain Place, they sold in 4 days, but they don't have quite the upgrades that we had, but they still garnered 100% of what they're asking. So it helps us kind of gauge, okay, what can we estimate, like in terms of negotiations, what can we estimate we'll end up at, and answer that question for our sellers. Well, what kind of offer how much am I going to get for my home? So that's how I look at that number. Most people are getting pretty close to what they're asking, and that's really conducive to what's happening in the market. There's not a lot of homes for sale. When there's not a lot of homes for sale, it drives that price up because there's more demand and less supply. My average days on market here, this one is bringing that number down. What I might also do is I can hop into InfoSparks, menu, InfoSparks, just to kind of show you here. And I could pull some stats on Albuquerque or on this specific market area. For instance, maybe I want to use 87120. And I want to say days on market and a bar graph. So we can see the median days on market, the average days on market, 27. So we can see here, this guy here, I think because he was a little overpriced, is bringing our days on market down. But this can also help us gauge how long properties are going to be on the market. Really probably not long. Assuming again it's priced right and condition is right, because again there's not a lot of supply. But this can help also answer those questions about, well, how long is it going to take my property to sell? Or how long of a listing agreement do we need? Now, we might not write a 30-day listing agreement. We might write a 60-day one. But if we're dealing in an area, let's say that's more rural, and we've got a really kind of unique home and the days on market are longer, or we're dealing in a higher price market and maybe we're selling $1 million home and days on market is going to be longer, then we can use this to help us gauge, okay, well, I think we're going to need to list this property for X number of days because this is what the market is telling us. So I'm going to use this to plot my properties, and I have a chart. I forgot to pull it before this class, but everybody who's here, I'm going to send it to you afterwards. I have a graph. Let me get to our whiteboard here, if I can do that. So I have a graph actually where I can, let me just do it on this paper here. So essentially what we're wanting to do is we've got our line here. And we're wanting to line up our comps. And so we've got our closed properties. So let's say we've got this one on Rain, that's 235. Sorry for my handwriting here with the mouse here. And then we've got this one on Animus for 255. So let's say this one is, let's say this one on Rain is similar to inferior condition, hypothetically, and then this one is the best. So then what we're wanting to do is to plot our subject. Okay, well, our subject, it's not quite stand out in terms of, you know, it has all of the bells and whistles, but it's not quite in this range either. Maybe it's over here. And so that's 255. So maybe we want to price at 245. Or we would say our property kind of falls here, and maybe this is the 240 or 235. I always used to give a range. Maybe this is the 235 to 245 range. So I actually have a graph I'll send out to you guys that you just plug in the data and it does this automatically for you. But this is essentially what you're aiming for. So our subject fits here, or our subject's right here, and maybe we just give them a range. I can use also my sales price to list price to give me a range. I know, okay, things are selling about 98, 99% of what people are asking. And so taking that off of our price, we've got $5,000 to play with. There's my range. Any questions? Don't worry about this piece. I'll email this out afterwards. So it's an easy chart. All you have to do is kind of plug and play. So again, the report, you can go from this kind of black and white, very simple demonstration here. In terms of interpreting the numbers, that's really what the clients want to hear and see, is the interpretation of the numbers. But there are a couple of other tools that you can look at as well, and I just want to make mention of them, just so you're aware of how it looks, how they look at the data. And that's RPR and Remind. They both have CMA tools. So we're going to take this information and now move into looking at some of those other tools. Do I have any questions before we do that? Okay. So I am going to go here to my flex, and I'm going to just go RPR. Okay, we'll let this guy think here. Uh-oh. Okay. All right. So I'm going to type in my property address here, and it's 8816 Arkansas Road Northwest. Okay. So now I'm in my property. I want to explain a couple of things here. Let me turn on my highlight tool if I can. Okay, so a couple of things that you'll see here. First is RPR assigns an algorithm value to all off-market properties. You're either going to see the active, pending, or closed price, or you will see either an RVM, which stands for Realtor Valuation Model, or AVM, which stands for Automated Valuation Model. What it's doing is it's taking properties around that area and it's saying these are most like our subject, and it's generating a value, much like a Zestimate. It's essentially the same thing. So this is a benchmark value, but again, the thing that this program can't do, and that any of these programs can't do, is they don't have the human element. So that's why looking at properties and knowing the nuances of the neighborhood are so valuable, because they can't see that the neighbor hasn't pulled their weeds in a year, or they can't see the big power line that's in the back of the property, or they can't smell the property, or they don't know that the seller has to move because they're relocating. And so those are really valuable things that come into play with actually going through the steps to run a CMA. But just note that's what this value is here. So if you're using RPR, you can speak to, well, they generate a value much like third-party sites do, and this is where that data is coming from. I can hop up here to Comp Analysis. There we go. I've been in here messing around with this already. There's two versions in here, and I want to explain the difference between these two. So the comparative analysis is their simplified version of a CMA. What it does is it takes me through the steps here, asks me to do some things like confirming the home's facts. Because this property has been off market, it pulls public record data. It asks me to make any changes if I need to. I can search for comps here. So I hit edit, or I would hit the comps button. Now the thing I can do here is adding a known property. I can actually plug in these MLS numbers and add them directly to my comp list, or I have the option to search for properties in a similar way to how I can search for properties on Flex. I can check the different fields and select my properties. They'll appear in a list. Let's see if I can get any to appear here. They'll appear in a list here, and then I just select the ones that I want. There we go, just like this. So I would select the ones that I wanted to use, that I've analyzed, and then I update. Now this piece right here is the biggest difference, and I'll tell you the challenges I think that come with this right here, and it's talking about adjustments. And it's actually a decent transition into talking about adjusting in general. So what this does is the simple CMA tool in our PR, they use, oh, there it is. I was like, where'd it go? They use a sliding scale. So they ask you to rate the properties based on the same, better, or worse condition. Where I think the challenge comes in with this is it's not allowing us to make concrete adjustments based on research. So in talking about adjustments, a couple of things. We don't adjust properties for the sake of just adjusting things. So we don't adjust things to death. Really, as brokers, we want to find the most comparable and like data to our subject, so we aren't making any adjustments. But if we have to make adjustments, there's no hard and fast rule that says, well, this house has a bathroom and this one doesn't. Well, if one doesn't, that's a bigger problem. But hypothetically, if we had a house, one that has a bathroom and one that doesn't, there's no hard and fast rule that says, oh, well, that's $500. Oh, that's $1,000. You have to research that area, similar areas that are close to our subject, maybe a neighboring neighborhood, and actually research and say, properties without this feature are selling for X, and properties with this feature are selling for Y, and what is that price difference? Is it a difference between 200 and 210,000? So that's a $10,000 difference, therefore a $10,000 adjustment. So it requires a lot of research and a lot of work to determine what constitutes an adjustment. What this tool does is the sliding scale allows you to rate the property, but it's using figures from a consultant called Hanley Wood. So they do research all over the nation, and they determine, you know, a bathroom upgrade on the West Coast is $5,000. A bathroom upgrade on the East Coast is $3,000. And that's where they come up with these numbers. Now, is a bathroom upgrade or a bathroom, is it always worth the same amount? If we have a property with one feature in Ventana Ranch and one feature in Uptown, does that always warrant the same type of value? No. If we have no garage in Ventana Ranch, we better figure out how to get a garage on that property in Ventana Ranch for it to sell. Versus same type, same size of property in Uptown, it doesn't have a garage, that's not necessarily a detriment. If we have a property that's 6 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, that could actually deflect from the price of our subject because it's functionally obsolete. We've got one bathroom and we better have a ticket taker outside the door. So there's a lot of factors that come into that. And so if you're using this, I just want you to be aware of where the data is coming from so that you can explain to your client, okay, this is how this adjustment came to be. And this is the information that they're using. Okay. And then I can review my comp analysis, and then I can create my report. The reports in RPR, especially the seller's report and the value reports, are like 75 pages long, which I personally find a little painful. So if you click on the details, you can come through and just select 5 or 10 pages that fit what you need and for your client. You go back. And just to show you the difference in the other comp tool, the sales comparison analysis, this is going to look more like a broker price opinion. So the main difference here, I'm going to just come right in here to this adjustments page, is if I click on that, I can see here, this looks, it's aligned to look very similar to a BPO, a broker price opinion. And so I can come in here and I can actually, from my research, I can say, okay, bathroom, this one only has 2 bathrooms. My subject has 3, so I need to bring this one up to meet my subject. And I've determined that that worth is $500 from my research. Now this one has 4 bathrooms, and so I need to bring this one down $500 so that they're all even. So that's the main difference in those 2 forms. So just to kind of show you what those look like in RPR. Do I have any questions about the CMA tool in RPR? Okay. The other thing I want to show you just very quickly is I'm going to go into menu, Remine. So Remine also has a simple CMA tool. Again, it searches for data a little bit differently. The thing I like in Remine and in RPR is I like the simplicity of the reports. I think that they're really clean and they look nice. But again, it's just a matter of knowing the data. So I need to come into my search bar here. Actually, let me just do this. We'll shortcut it here a little bit. Let's see. No, let's go back. Okay, so I have to pull up my property, which happens to be, I should know the address by now, 8816. Okay. So we'll let this load this. There we go. Okay, so I've got my property record here. And I click the CMA button. So this integrates with Cloud CMA if there's any Cloud CMA users on the class today. But we've also got the Remind 360. So what it asks you to do here, which is a little bit different, is you plug in your parameters in terms of how many bedrooms, bathrooms, all of the details that you want for the property. I want active, pending, closed. Maybe I want to see closed off MLS within a certain time frame. So let's go back a little bit. Now I only have the option to go back in a radius in Remind, and so I have to be mindful of my areas here. So what it gives me is my list of properties, and I go through and I select them. I say, okay, well, this one on Kanga Drive Northwest, for whatever reason, we want to omit that, so we just remove it there. So it gives us our listing here, and then we save. There we go, save and continue. I can brand my report, and then this is what I get. So again, it's a really simple, clean report with some demographics. It also includes some third-party AVMs here. First American actually is the only one that's available. So again, you have to know how to speak to your clients about those AVMs. And then it includes our comps. What I feel is the challenge in this tool also is you don't have a lot of flexibility in terms of your searching and your data analysis. And so, you know, there may be ways that you use this tool in conjunction with the searching in Flex. You may find a way that this tool really works for you, or the Remind tool really works for you as well. And so I just kind of wanted to show you some of the different options here, but this is what their CMA report looks like as well. Doesn't give you the option to make any sort of adjustments as it does in RPR, or I used to, when I would do my CMAs, I used this report and an Excel spreadsheet, and I would do things manually, probably because I have a type A problem that I would do that, but that is how I did my CMAs. And so there's no right or wrong way. There are a lot of tools and options for you. You just have to know how to be able to analyze the data. And really at the core, how to pull those comps and how to analyze that data and how to create that real marketing strategy from this information. So we've talked about CMA, analyzing the comps, the active, pending, closed, and even the expired properties. We've talked about how to search using the wildcard search and mapping. We've talked a little bit about adjustments. We've talked about RPR and Remind. Are there any questions that are top of mind that I can answer for you? Karma, condos. Okay, so condos, condos can be tough. Again, you want to handle it kind of the same the same way that you would a single family detached property, but you're going to compare apples to apples condos. So for instance, yeah, that's what I was just going to say. So for instance, Karma, Deanna, I see your question too. Like if I'm looking in the Anastasi building, for instance, I think it's on Central and 5th, and it's a big building. I'm going to want to start there and try to compare my properties there. What I might do is I might make adjustments for size to try to stay within the limits of that building. But if I had to go outside of a particular building, I would stick with the characteristics. So like I wouldn't compare a downtown condo to like a condo on Montgomery, for instance. I would stick downtown and try to find condos like kind of the same makeup and build to kind of try to compare the two. So that's, I would try to maybe stick in the same building first and maybe make adjustments for the size. Or I would compare like downtown condo to downtown condo of the same kind of makeup and size. Does that make sense? Did that kind of answer your question? Okay, cool. Deanna, is it hard to compare custom homes? Yeah, it can be. I might have to think on that one a little bit. If I had, like, are you talking like a new custom home or a custom built resale? So if I'm dealing,
we built a brand new custom home, but I don't know how I would compare it to my neighbors who also have new. There's one old house on our neighborhood, but most of them are brand new also.
Okay. So, okay, for using that example, I would probably compare to some of the other custom homes and just trying to really find customs that are, that have similar features to mine, similar size, similar features. And you might have to do some research and make adjustments as well, based on what, they might have versus what you might have.
Okay.
You might have to go to, now I don't know where yours is, but you might have to go again, kind of outside of the area, but in similar subject areas and look at those as well and see what you're dealing with.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, John. I'm going to email it to everybody. It takes a little bit to download the recording and stuff. So I probably will get it out to you guys tomorrow, but yeah, not a problem. I'll send everything. Happy to. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop